Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. So, if we didn't meet before, my name is Alexander Denisov. I'm Chief Software Engineer in EPAM Systems, and also one of organizers of community mobile people. And one more important fact: I'm Flutter developer, and today we are going to talk about Flutter. Recently, to be exactly in the beginning of September, in Norway, Oslo, was take a place a conference. I would say one of the biggest Flutter conference in Europe, Flutter Vikings. I think that in this year it was the biggest one. And there were a lot of interesting activities, and 2 days, free streams, and streams were named Thor, Valhalla, and Odin, so that attendees immediately feel like Vikings. And there were 36 talks by Flutter experts around the world. But conference is not only about talks. There were a lot of interesting people from the Flutter community. For example, on this photo you can see Philip Hrachik and Remy Rousselet. If you're a Flutter developer, I suppose you know who Remy Rousselet and who Philip Hrachik are. And there were also Felix Angelov, Dominik Reszkowski, and so on. And of course, the organizer of Flutter Vikings, Majid Hajan, he is also a Flutter expert. Also, there are a lot of interesting booth activities. On this photo, you can see Google community booth. Attendees could take a part in code competition there. Code competition, I mean, two developers tried to repeat the same UI in Flutter, and who faster is a winner and can get a prize, like Dash or Google Home. And of course, there were Flutter team representatives, and they also were speakers. And in the end of conference, there was a round table where any attendees could ask any question to them. I would say that they answered all of questions, but it was possible to ask. So we are here on the stream mostly because of content, of course. 36 talks. Just try to imagine how much time you need to spend to watch all of them. It's about 36 hours, I believe. Okay. If you watch speed 1 with half, it will be 24. But anyway, it's too much. That's why we decided to watch all of them instead of you, and just spend time, watch all talks, and share with you our impressions. And thank you very much to guys from the community who supported this activity, who watched all talks, and who will share impressions with you today. It's Dmitra Prelenko, he watched Odin stream, Dmitra Stryansky watched Valhalla stream, and Bogdan Dashuk watched Thor stream. So I also going to share with you my impressions about one talk. So we can start. But before we start, I want to remember that you can ask any questions. Just type questions in the chat, and we will try to answer all of them in the end of presentations. And don't forget to like or subscribe. Or always forget where is the button subscribe. Okay, let's move on. I would recommend to watch this talk by Craig Lebens, Lifecycle of a Widget. Craig Lebens is developer advocate in Flutter team. Yeah, and this talk is very nice. So usually Flutter developers think that they know about widget lifecycles everything, and the first that usually comes to mind is something like this: init state, git change dependency, git update widget, and so on. Yes, but it's not exactly true. Here is terminology mistake. Actual Flutter has no life cycle. Actual widget has no life cycle at all. Yes, surprise. Well, why? Because widget is just configuration object, and Craig describes what exactly widget is, what widget should contain, what shouldn't contain, and what signs of widget are there. He also tell what kind of widget are there in Flutter. Usually, everybody remember only stateless and stateful widget because it's usual things that you use, but there are not only stateless and stateful widget. Stateless and stateful widgets just widget containers that gives opportunity to to make your own combination of widget out of the box, but sometimes we completely forget about different type of widget, render object widgets that exactly render something on the screen. And he moves to lifecycle and show that despite the famous phrase "everything is a widget" in Flutter, there is not only a widget. You can remember probably widget tree, element tree, render object tree, probably met them. I just named Flutter forest because trees, forest. Yeah, and there is an object that, how to say, controls all phases of building these trees. This object has name scheduler binding, and try to guess what this object do. Yes, it schedules tasks, and it has a phases, and each phase it's one phase of building of everything, and each phase scheduler binding controls all these phases and controls, for example, idle in the phase when Flutter do nothing. Transient callbacks phase when animation callbacks running, microtask callbacks, persistence callbacks, post-frame callbacks, and for example, callbacks that you usually remember, like did change dependency, did update widget, all of them is persistence callbacks and execute only in this phase. And here he just talked to us that there are really two kind of objects that have lifecycle. It's element and state. Only they. Uh, Despite the fact that element and state is has strong relationship between, but we are talking about them in different context because life cycle of state is just set of callbacks, a life state of element it's set of really states, and they also have a strong relationship, and you can understand when you watch the movie, the talk, how it related to. And when Greg tell about state life cycle, he really deep dive inside every callback and show us how it really works inside the Flutter. So this was a short description of the talk. And finally, if you really want to understand how it works inside the Flutter, I would recommend to watch this movie. This movie, just this talk. This talk already published to YouTube. You can just scan this QR and move and watch it. Full version of the talk. So here is the last slide of my presentation, but not the last slide of our stream today. And I want to invite Dmitry Ostryansky. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for the invite.
Yes, and Valhalla.
Yep, SIP. Yep. Hello, everyone. My name is Dmitry Ostryansky. I'm a Flutter engineer at EPAM system, and I'm gonna talk about Valhalla room. First of all, let's check on the whole presentation. And on this slide, you can see the ones from the first day. Also, some in bold, I'm gonna talk about more detail. So, first day started from since deep dive into Flutter daeming. Mike talked about the daeming and material tree. We'll discuss about that later. Fun with code generation. In my opinion, Anna approaches this topic in an interesting way. She creates the application entirely by hand and then refactored it step by step to replace all manual work with code generation and build runner libraries. And from someone, this might be useful. Life cycle of a widget. Alexander Denisov has already talked about this topic, and I also think this presentation is will be very useful for even for experienced developers. Snapshot filters with Flutter's custom painter and MLKit. In this talk, Boy and Kanksha will be also talking about using MLKit for face detection and explaining how to build snapshot-like filters with Canvas and custom painter. For me, if you're interested in this technology, you should check it out. Structure your GraphQL apps. From what I have seen, Christian describes the structure of a GraphQL application in some detail and interesting way. If you have ever worked or you want to work with GraphQL, this presentation is definitely worth a look. And last in first day was RiverPod 2. Honestly, I'm not familiar with RiverPod, but if you're interested in this topic, you can learn more about new features. With an example, because Remy Lab created an application that interacts with PubDev and integrates some new features. And going to second day, and he start from Flutter FFI and fun Windows development with Dart and Win32. which we'll cover a little later. And we go to the next, custom user interaction building a desktop driving app. In this talk, Justin demystified how the shortcut intent action system works in Flutter. He provided lots of examples alongside the demo application where we can see all the result. In my opinion, this presentation will be most interesting to those who want or working with Flutter desktop. Building Flutter apps in Lego style. I think this is one of unusual approaches of building architecture, but more about that later. Another world in Flutter. Honestly, it was interesting to watch how Simon bring a game from 30 years ago to Flutter and talk in detail about his process, problems, and discoveries. Quick start to game development in Flutter. Philip sharing his experience of building an indie game with Flutter, and I can tell from my own experiences that he motivated to create some kind of games. And finally, we could see the Flutter QA. Okay, let's move to the first presentation. And it's a deep dive into Flutter daeming with Mike Ristrom. Mike talked about more in detail about Flutter daeming and the possible pitfalls of switching to Material Tree. He told us how to use dem data is 8 different ways, like dem data from, color scheme from seed. The funny thing is that not all of them work in the same way, and sometimes you miss colors that you will have to fix it later. And another topics from this presentation you can see on the slide. Okay. Also, he talked about flex color scheme package, which has more flexibility to how color scheme currently work in Flutter Material Tree implementation. A package definitely worth to look. And also, Mike described his dem playground in more detail, which will be very useful for any Flutter developer. You can see it on slide where you can choose needed your color options and get source code. From my own experience, it can be very useful when you got a project, for example, without designer. As far as considerate, Mike has shown a great amount of his knowledge on this topic, giving very useful tips even for experienced developers. And here you can scan a link to his presentation. So we move to next presentation, and it's Flutter and Fun with Windows development with Dart and Win32. With Tim Sneed. He is Flutter product and UX director at Google. Tim explained an interesting and useful topic if you have been working with desktop. He showed how to get the most out of cross-platform application on Windows. Tim was able to captivate me throughout the presentation with many examples, and each example was given in really just the right time. And after a few flashbacks to writing console code, Tim presented the basic of FFI Dart with Win32, where he told about how as a Dart developer, all you have to do is map C functions to Dart functions, and explain how to work with pointer in the case where you need to work with memory allocation. Also, for those who are interested in Dart console development, Tim shared a lot of useful features of Dart console package and showed by example how to work with some Windows API. All list of API you can see on this slide. For example, he developed and showed native dialog box on Windows. At the end, Tim showed more example like Notepad and Tetris, where you can see on slide 10. He talked about how they were developed, and they were not written in Flutter code, but in Dart using just Windows API. And here you can scan link to the presentation, and finally, we're going to Anna and Alexander Lещенко. They are Google developers, experts in Flutter Dart, and they got building Flutter apps in Lego style. So I like it very much that they presented a very informative talk on how to create a compositive and reusable architecture in a Flutter application and describing it all in Lego style. On this slide, you can see an example application with QR on them Git. Also, in this presentation, they describe an architecture based on Lego-style modular programming and tell about in details. In other words, they lead models as packages in Dart and show how to build architecture by example. Also, they talk about decomposition and go through all architecture layers in details. All layers you can see on this slide. And at the end, they talked about packages, Mason and Milos, explaining how to work with these packages when you're building your architecture. Of course, you can scan link, and that's all. Thank you so much for listening. Sasha?
Yes, thank you. I think questions we can add in the end of translation, because during your talk we have got no questions. So I think we can move on. Hello, Bogdan.
Hi there.
And here's your slides.
Yeah, hope the slides are visible. Okay, so I'm gonna continue our talk and make the overview from topics from Tor room. At the beginning, we will cover each talk briefly and highlight the best or most interesting parts. That's why we are getting down to the first day. Take your Flutter animation to the next level. The speaker talked about scrolling and advanced hero animations, how to implement gyroscope effect. The pure quality for now, but you can clone repo and check everything locally. Flutter architecture components. Talk started from architecture history overview. What is state management? Mentioned top packages for state management. End-to-end IoT with Dart and Flutter. Chris described his experience of using Dart language for writing device driver. Sensor, how that get data from about heart rate and oxygen saturation, and mentioned about end-to-end encryption. Create a responsive UI for authenticator flows. What is the difference between adaptive and responsive? Widget for responsive UI. Shortly about AWS Amplify and Authenticator UI. Understanding Flutter handling of gestures, cool and very useful for everyone, so certainly worth attention. Understanding native platform use for mobile and beyond. Talked about platforms use, how to build own camera plugin, and also UIKit view, Android view with description and samples. Taking the bus, creative reactive Flutter apps using an event bus. The speaker explained the idea of what is the bus, what is benefits, and mentioned about event bus library. Trusting your client, live coding a cross-platform multiplayer bingo app. Amazing and emotional talk about the Firebase and key benefits of Cloud First Store using on bingo game example. Market talk will be covered in details. So today agenda will be meet Mason into template and custom code generation, parallel beauty with isolates into the Mandelbrot set, from single player to multiplayer, building real-time collaborative experiences with Flutter. So let's slightly talk about each of them. Felix Angelov, head of architecture at Very Good Ventures. I think everyone from Flutter community knows who he is. Mason, template generator, which helps teams generate files provide ability to share templates with other developers. I already have experience with the above-mentioned package, and I enjoyed the talk. Felix fully covered all necessary information about the presented package with great examples and notes. The original talks was divided into 3 chapters, and let's start with the first one. In this part was covered how to install Mason. All of you need is to run several commands, how to create a local scoped workspace for working with bricks, described anatomy of the mason.yaml file, installing brick process. At the second part was described how to create brick oven template. What is template really? In bottom of the slide, we can see example or anatomy of the mason.yaml file, brick metadata, like descriptions, versions, and variables that include string, number, boolean, enum, array, and examples how work with them. Hooks, custom code that executes before or after generation. And last but not least, template syntax. As you may see on the slide, I want to share about Brick Hub, which is similar to PubDev, but for bricks templates. Convenient, clear, fast way to working with bricks. And also how to publish all brick into Brick Hub, get bricks from Brick Hub locally. I mentioned about plugin for VS Code. Short of top, for the time being, more than 160 bricks are uploaded on Brick Hub. All of them from verified uploaders. That is already rather good. A few months before, amount of downloads of the most popular brick model was less than 4,000. At that moment, more than 8,000. Brick Hub becomes more and more popular, and bricks becomes more complicated too. From my perspective, after watching this talk, it will definitely be enough to start working with Mason. Useful links, official site, Brick Hub link, and link and QR to the package. Turning to the next one. Thomas Burkhardt, Google developer expert in Flutter Dart, contributor of such packages as Get It Functional Listener. In his blog, you can get more info about fundamentals of Dart streams and Eric's Dart. Parallel beauty with isolates into the Mandelbrot set. It's definitely my favorite one, so I will focus on it as much as possible. Despite the fact that at the moment the recording leaves much to be desired, will be re-uploaded soon. The talk is definitely worth attention, especially if you look at the source code. I really like that Thomas made the point absolutely clear and described the difference between multi-threading and parallel processing, how to split workload on several cores, isolates the data way to multi-threading, and mentioned about transferable data class that allows send data without copies very fast. Thomas' example illustrated benefits of parallel processing. Here we can see a render time of calculating in one main isolate, calculating on 8 isolates. Time of calculating Mandelbrot set was decreased when we added more cores. In addition, explained steps to set up and isolate correctly, useful enough to refresh your knowledge. Here's text from original presentation. Speaker mentioned why compute is not best solution at work with isolates, tiles, what is it and what's for. Described the work of the render manager and how the UI is rendered. On the slide, we can see how complicated that inner structure is. Thomas well explained the structure and flow, step by step, what's going on under the hood of application, execution queue, how isolates return data after computation, how tiles are rendered. To sum up, it was very interesting to listen. I definitely advise you to watch as well as to look into the source code. Useful links, link and QR to the repo. You can scan if you want to check source code. Moving on to the very last one, Eero Kranka, principal developer in Superlist, Flutter developer with more than 5 years experience, from single player to multiplayer, building real-time collaborative experiences with Flutter. This talks covered online cooperation text editor, under the hood, and cases on development stage. We all used to use Google Docs, etc., where we can watch updates in real time, get history of updates. It's not as easy as it could seem. Eero covered cases to implement this feature set fully, the issues they faced on dev stage and the ways they've solved them. And let's have a look at the tools. Quill Delta package, it's a util for changing, transferring documents. Eero showed how this package works. On the slide, we can see its structure. Example of insert operation. Eero described document deltas, attributes like bold text and custom realizations, change deltas, insert, retain, delete, how to use and what's for. Enough attention was paid to synchronization mechanism, typical issues, and how they were solved. Showed a server client example step by step, and covered unhappy flows like all version of document. Operations that allows to bring an outdated changes into up-to-date. Transforming document selections, work of selection transformation that solves problem with a cursor on a random position after another user made changes in the document, like update of set based on the last changes. Undo redo logic with implementing local history. Of course, it's not the all information provided at the conference. Some details weren't covered in this presentation. Therefore, in case you are interested in the subject, I would review the talk on the Flutter Vikings channel. Some useful links, personal website, link and QR to the repo. That's all from my side. I hope I was able to interest you in watching the original talks.
Yes, thank you, Bogdan. Darkness around myself. This is the evening in the window, but I didn't switch on the light. Okay, let's move on. I still don't see questions in the comments. Probably later, if you, I mean, our watchers, if you don't have questions now, you always can ask them in the comments of the stream, and we'll try to answer as well. So let's move on to the next stream, to the Odin stream, and I want to invite to hear Dmitra Prelenka.
Hey everyone.
Yes, hello, and probably you want to see your slides.
I would like. Hey, thank you, Alexander.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for joining. I hope most of you are still here with us, and thanks those who's watching recording. Okay, so my name is Dmitra Prelenko. I'm lead Flutter developer at EPAM Systems, and I'm head of Flutter community in South region of Ukraine. So the last but not least room is Odin. That is not technically, that is not such technical as the previous two, but still has some really good and nice topics to discover. Day one started with nice speech concerning testing widget 3. Probably most of you knows how to test widget, but what about widget 3 testing? If you have any questions for that, go ahead and watch this stream. Flutter Web in Action. This one I really liked, and we're going to discuss it very soon. If you ever had any problems with M1 machines, considering using M1 or M2 for continuous delivery, you should be aware. There are some problems, and you better watch this stream first, and then you'll decide. The next one is importance of community and leadership. Great talk. Actually, this why Flutter succeeded, I think, because of community, because of you. Probably you're gonna contribute soon, I hope. Another two great stories and reporters coming along and telling about their pains of building big products and like working with complex team structures. So probably if you ever had such pain, you'll like it. Advanced scrolling techniques is one of my favorite actually, and soon you'll know why. Google Fonts Flutter is nice speech, but I think it's more for designers than the developers, because we as developers don't really care about fonts usually. We are just using the default ones or the one that was given to us by designer. I'm talking about me personally. Okay, and the next one, encasing my app for foldables. It's a really nice live code demonstration of playing with the design for foldable phones. The pretty interesting thing about this presentation that it gives us like more wide thinking, because we as mobile developers mostly work with only one screen at a time, and while working with foldable, you should always consider like two screens or scaling those screens as well. The second day started with a topic with the theme that everyday developers should start with, testing, I mean. Ultimate cookbook of Flutter testing, worth watching definitely. Power of federated plugins in Flutter ecosystem. Well, what's the difference between package and plugin? Hesitate on an answer? Just watch this show and you'll get all the necessary answers. Guests also raised such themes as platform channels, what is federated plugin is, Pigeon, what are endorsed plugins. So go ahead and look at that. Next topic discovers how can we make a connection between Apple Watch and Flutter as thing speak for itself, like Apple Watch plus Flutter, no problem. Almost yes. So you watch and then you will try that. Flipping developer relations in the world of Flutter. I think that will be interesting for community leaders, for those who just start their path at leading. A/B testing is and understanding user behavior is actually a nice presentation, and like the main thing about is, thanks God, we have Firebase, because it has an answer why do we need A/B tests and how to use them, and actually how to integrate in our Flutter web application. So the next great topic about testing is premium golden test. Better watch this. Draw and double with your custom render box. Awesome topic, and I'll speak about it later. Secure your Flutter web app using multi-factor authentication. It's actually a nice topic. It covers some basics of securing your app, but like the most of the topic is about Firebase multi-factor authentication integration. So pretty nice, pretty interesting. You may watch this later. So let's start with the first theme, Flutter Web in action. And Joachim Bockmer was the presenter, the speaker for this talk. So he talks about his experience of porting web application into Flutter. And actually, he deep dives into whether we choose Flutter for web or not, and whether we actually can optimize Flutter for web as we'd like to. So he discovers Flutter pros like Google developer experience. He talks that they have better user experience, of course, in comparison to Pixie and HTML, probably even Xamarin will be good. Sorry for those who like Xamarin, but yeah. And he deep dives into web render. He talks about the difference between HTML render and Canvas GIS render, about the runtime, the differences between them, and why do you need to choose one or another. He also talks about optimization, and probably that's the main thing about his talk. He actually passed a really hard way of optimizing the app, and he gives us just good tips what to do and how to do them. So they replaced decorations with images. They used 9-slice technique, but it was not good enough, so they went to 3-slice technique. They switch render path. They change runtime location. Dynamic render change. They all did that. They did also asset preloading, and they even did transition warm-up. Probably, if you're familiar with iOS, you actually have heard about warming up animations and all that stuff. It is pretty easy to do that in iOS, but for web applications, that is very tricky. So he just talks about what he liked and disliked in Flutter, and like everybody knows what he liked, and it is pretty simple things. But he actually disliked the initial invest because like you should learn Dart, you should learn Flutter. Initially, you should spend like a lot of time. Currently, he says that there is a poor web support, and probably he's right. There is a performance gap to native, and of course, like, no one disagrees with that. And there are still visual glitches. He actually gave some useful links, and I would love to include his presentation, but currently it's not available. So you can use this QR code later, and there will be links, but currently there is nothing there. All right, let's go to the next talk. And have you ever wondered if list view, single chronological view, and grid view are enough? The answer is no. Like, we always need to go deeper. And Renan Rauger helps us with that. He speaks about creating viewports for desktop, but it's just a little thing. It's just like an iceberg, and he talks about only the top. So with large viewports come great responsibility and also great performance compromises. I think that's like we live in 2022, and 120 FPS is what we should always try to achieve. And when it comes like lower, users will see this, and you will see this, and the world never be the same after 120. So he speaks about a spreadsheet UI for Flutter desktop. And as just as an example, so he met 4 major problems of creating those, like multiple tables per page, scroll into axis, millions of data units, and continuous scroll during selection. So the answer on most of them was pretty easy, just sliver. You should use sliver. Sliver will be enough for that. But sometimes some of them were very tricky, like multiple tables per page, custom scroll view with different slivers solves this really easy. Scrolling to text axis was pretty tricky, and like I really didn't like that, but he solved the problem, and that was nice. Millions of data units, slivers can also help you, but continuous scroll during selection, we'll talk about it later. So he also discovers the box protocol and sliver protocol, and they are different. Box protocol is the usual way how widgets are built, are laid out. So constraints go down, sizes go up, and parent sets position. That's what we are used to. That's how we build. But sliver protocol is kind of different because sliver constraints go down, sliver geometry goes up, and parents set position. And the way he made continuous scroll during selection was custom scroll behavior. So worth watching, worth yourself. And here are some useful links if you'd like to. He also gave some nice tutorial, which you can find under this link. Really worth watching, all of them. The next topic was draw undrawable with your custom render books, and reporters were Camille Kluta and Victoria Sobzik. They talked about render box. They took as an example the hexagonal button. Of course, you can make it with ClickPath, but I think it was the easiest way to show you what we can do with render box and how it can be used actually. So render box protocols have layout, paint, heat test, and semantics. And Gaius covered all of these topics. Great respect that they also touched semantics, and they didn't miss that because we all are different, as they stated. They also said when we should use renderbox, and most of the time you should not use it because you have widgets, you have ClickPath, you have like lots of tools. But when the time comes, you should know that there is a renderbox and it's time to use it. First, like when undrawable, there is undrawable and widgets are not enough. Performance optimization is also required. There are different types of render box, like render box proxy, render shifted box, render stock, rendered paragraph, platform view render box, and like lots of them. They in their example, they showed render shifted box because they wanted to control the position of the text in the bottom. There are also render object widgets. They mentioned leaf render object widget, multi-child render object widget, single child render object widget, and like there are lots of others. To sum up, in Flutter, everything is a widget, but what you see is not just a widget. Renderbox is powerful too, and you can do like almost everything with it. But you should also take consideration that there are a lot of code to run, to write, and it is very complicated. You should be confident with math and all the other things. So probably you should go to the useful links that they have provided. They have also transported their presentation, and you can watch it. So probably that's it. Thank you for watching, and thank you for your attention.
Mhm. Thank you, Mitra. So, what I want to say, uh, thank you for your attention. If you're still with us, uh, sorry for quality. Backstage is not very good for me today. Yes, and the light is not very nice. Next time, I hope everything will be better. Uh, so, uh, always welcome with your questions, with your proposals, and everything. If you want to say to us something, see you next time. Mm. Bye.